Famine is like the end of the spectrum, but before we get to that, we have food security crises, emergency level hunger in which people are dying, in which they've basically sold off their livestock, which means their future recovery is really in question as well. In a sense, a declaration matters for the donors in theory. I mean, the idea is that a famine declaration triggers a donor response. The problem is that by the time we've got to famine, deaths are already underway. The issue really for Somalia is that we've known that there was a real crisis underway. The early warning was signaling that there was a real problem. The issue with early warning is that you need to have a political response. You need to get donors, you need to get the aid system moving quickly. The lessons that have been learned time and time again is that anticipating famine or any disaster and acting early means that you obviously reduce the amount of people in crises. What we had in Somalia was very low levels of funding right up until the middle of this year. And so the response has been delayed. Yes, there's problems in terms of accessing parts of the Somali population in need, but the fundamental issue was the money wasn't there in time to really roll out an effective response. And even in August, we're still at only 70% of the money needed, 70% of the projected needs for the response. What we do know is that conflict obviously worsens the situation, and Somalia has been in war for 2 decades. Secondly, we need to have governments that are responsive and care for its population. And in certain countries, we've seen governments who either use famine or use food as a weapon of war, or have just neglected their populations and haven't put in the services that can support. Famine is not just about starvation. Most people die as well from health, from lack of water. I mean, there's a whole range of issues. So I think a narrow focus just on the classic image of starving children is right at the end of the spectrum. And famine, perhaps in a sense, is not the problem. What we should be focusing on is stopping people who are in dire need, those situations, those conditions worsening. And that is a political decision. It's about choice. It's about choice from the donors to act with alacrity. And it's about choice of governments to really respond to the needs of their people.